Thank you for joining today's session. We'll be getting started shortly. We do have a lot of folks signed up for today's session, and we want to give everyone a moment to log on and get connected so that we can dive into today's session. I do want to thank you all for joining us today. I am Jasmine Garrett here with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Today's session is an informational overview on the Activation, Revitalization, and Transformation A.R.T Phase 2 program. A quick housekeeping note, we do suspect that many questions will be answered in today's presentation. However, you are able to write in questions at any point during the presentation using Zoom's Q&A feature. It is one of your Zoom command options and will allow us to make sure we are able to get back to you and let others see the questions and answers as well. Today's session is being recorded and we will be posted on our NJEDA and YouTube pages. The slides and other resources will also be available in the next few days. Now to get us started with the presentation, I will shift things over to NJEDA's Chief Community Development Officer, Ty Cooper. Ty?
Thank you so much, Jasmine, and super excited to be here. Really want to give a thank you to the governor, to the legislators, our brave and fearless CEO, Tim Sullivan, for truly valuing the arts. The program that we're going to talk about today and the funding we're going to talk about today marks the first time in EDA's history where we have earmarked and allocated funds solely dedicated to the arts. That is a huge triumph, a huge win. So thank you to the advocates throughout the state that have really been pushing this. As you all know, arts and culture are a vital component to move economic development forward, but also to move, more importantly, community, place-based development forward. And super excited about this. We're going to go to, I think, the next slide. And this is one of the quotes that we put up by our Honorable Lieutenant Governor Tahisha Way, who is over the Council of the Arts. Arts in all its varied forms enhances the lives of New Jerseyans. It ultimately shines a light on all aspects of society by lifting our spirits, beautifying communities, and attracting visitors. And with that, I am now super excited to turn this over to Barbara Bickert, who is the first senior advisor that we've ever had at EDA that's fully focusing on arts and culture. She literally has the word art in her name. And so I am very happy to turn this over to her, Barbara Bickert.
Thank you, Todd. It seems like destiny, right? I was meant to do this and I was meant to be at the EDA because what has happened in the last year that I've been here has been completely exciting. The fact that we have been able to revise ART Phase 1 to become ART Phase 2 as a program now that is really very focused with the full intention of supporting the arts and culture sector. Can I have the next slide, please? Thanks, Jasmine. Our intention with the rewrite is to catalyze the arts and culture sector and nonprofits. And so we have very intentionally revised this program to do just that really as a call to arts and culture non-sector to come out and do what they do best, to make art, to grow and strengthen communities, and to stimulate local economies in doing just what they do. Next slide, please. I should say one other thing, that the $15 million for this program is federal funding that is intended to reinvigorate communities that have been most hurt by COVID. So there are 31 municipalities that are designated as most in need of that kind of reinvigoration. The projects themselves must be executed within one of those municipalities, and the projects need to happen within 1.5 miles of an active rail station in one of those municipalities. The projects will need to be completed by December 31st, 2026. It's a scored and competitive program. The applications will open, we're aiming for them to open sometime in mid-September, and there will be a 60-day calendar window once the applications open to the time that the applications are due. What we're super excited about is, among other things, is the fact that folks will have, give or take 3 months right now, to plan before the application opens, and then an additional 60 days to start conceptualizing, to planning really strong projects based on what you do organically as arts and culture organizations, to find partners and to roll strong projects out that are really tailored to these communities. The application award sizes are a minimum of $100,000, maximum ask is $500,000. One of the very exciting things about this, about phase 2, is that we've been able to do away with the application fee. And I'll take the next slide. So here's how it works. Eligible applicants must be a nonprofit, a 501c3, C6, or C19. You have to be in good, substantial good standing with the EDA, Department of Labor, and DEP prior to approval. You must have current tax clearance at the time of application. One application per nonprofit, so you cannot apply more than once. So lead applicant, you can partner, but one application per lead applicant. And I want to underscore this next point because this question has already come up as I've been out there talking to folks about it. Nonprofit applicants do not have to be located within the same municipality as the eligible project location. We're going to go in a second to the 31 eligible locations of municipalities, but a nonprofit does not have to be, for example, inside the bounds, inside the city limits of Asbury Park, which is one of the municipalities. The nonprofit can be, in a neighboring town, a neighboring community, and can apply to do a project based in Asbury Park. I'll talk more about that in a little while. Ineligible applicants as lead applicants for the program are government entities, municipalities, for-profit entities, or any applicant or affiliate that received a grant for A.R.T. phase 1. The ineligible applicants can, however, partner with a lead. Okay, we'll talk more about that as we go. Next slide, please. On page 6. So these are the 31 municipalities. I'm guessing that everybody on this call has already tuned into this and you know whether or not your town is eligible to have a project take place within the bounds, within the parameters of 1.5 miles from the transit hub. Next slide, please. Here's how you determine whether or not your project, the project that you are conceptualizing, is within the range of the train station. So Jasmine's going to demonstrate. If you could click on the mapping tool, and again, you guys will have access to this slideshow, so you'll have all of this information available. If you go to the left-hand column here, click in the box that says A.R.T. phase 2 eligible areas. Right there, and you see that the map comes up and the pink areas highlighted are the eligible municipalities. If you type into the address you're considering, so for the sake of illustration here, let's put in 500 First Avenue, Asbury Park, New Jersey, 07712. And then click on the, yep, there it is. So it comes up, it's inside the pink area. You know it's an eligible location and site to do your project. And if you zoom out, you can see the full designation of eligible area and sites within Asbury Park. So that's how the mapping tool works. I know that I've gotten several questions already from folks about how does it work. Thank you, Jasmine. If we could go back to the slide, please. Next slide is project activities. I want to spend a little bit of time on this one. So the creation of public space activation initiatives such as placemaking project, public art installations, and arts-based projects. So that's the broad stroke language. We went on with phase 2 and the revision to further detail the kinds of projects that are eligible. Activities or initiatives include, but are not limited to, art exhibitions, performance, festivals, parades, concerts, concert series, film and video screenings, and cultural programming. One of the things I want to underscore here that is particular and something that I'm really excited that we were able to do is that if you're in arts and culture full-time, that's what you do, nonprofit organization, and you look at this, you understand the kind of open-endedness in what we are asking for. It gives you room to propose a project, to conceptualize a project, and design a project that is organic to the work that you may already be doing in the sector. So hopefully folks are going to think hard about what to propose, what to conceptualize, work with partners, which is something we have incentivized in the scoring mechanism, and design projects that are suited to your strengths and to what you already do. You don't need to go out and reinvent the wheel. You don't need to go out and do a public art piece in your local town park if that's not what you already do. Think about what you do. Think about what your strengths are. Think about what your limits are and design projects based on what you do and hopefully expand on what you do with the funding that you get. The funding can also be used to support operational costs for the applicants to execute their projects. So when it comes to the source and uses document, which is EDA language more or less for a budget, how are you going to use the funds? You can account in that document for costs associated, including personnel, including infrastructure that do have to do with the project in particular. Next slide, please. Ineligible project uses, anything related to real estate. Phase 1 was connected to real estate, phase 2, and this 15 million is no longer at all connected to real estate. So we just want to be clear about that. And next slide, please. The application process. Once the application opens sometime in mid-September, as I said, is what we're aiming for. The application will be open for 60 calendar days. Once the application closes, the staff will perform a review of all submitted applications and the eligibility documentation. Matt, in a second, my colleague Matt Boyle is going to go over what the eligibility documents are. So let me explain right here. There's a sort of a two-phase process of review on our end. You all will submit applications within that 60-day period and by the deadline. Once the application window closes, EDA staff will say, okay, are all of the basic eligibility documents in order from, the specific applicant? If they are, we'll review them. If they're all in order, we'll check off the list and that application will be ready to go to the scoring phase. If they are not in order, you will be given a 10-day period to cure or submit documents that cure for eligibility. And here's where I'm going to hand it off to Matt because he can speak in more detail to that point.
Yeah, thanks, Barb. So just regarding the cure period, it'll be after staff reviews the applications at the end of the application period. Like Barb said, it will be only for eligibility documentation, which in a future slide here, we'll go over that particular documentation. During the cure period, we're going to send out written notification of what needs to be cured and what documents are required to move the file on the scoring. There'll be limited communication with EDA staff to ensure that one applicant doesn't have more communication or access to materials than another applicant during that cure period. At the end of the 10 business days, EDA staff will review all the cures and documentation at that point. From there, the applicants that meet all the eligibility documentation will be moved on to scoring. The scoring scale is between 0 and 100 points. A applicant needs a minimum of 65 points to be recommended for board. Next slide. Once the projects go to board and are approved, it'll move to the grant agreement stage, and the applicants will be fully funded upon execution of the grant agreement. There will be additional documentation, including insurance requirements and potentially prevailing wage requirements as part of the final grant agreement. And this program in general has no application fee or approval fee. Next slide, please. So this is going to break down the list of eligibility documentation. Here's the documents you'll need. Next slide. So again, all these documents are eligibility documents, which will be EDA staff will be reviewing prior to it going to the scoring committee, and will be a part of the cure process. One is the NJ-EDA mapping tool, which shows the location like Barb did an example of. Another is the state document of business formation, as well as the IRS determination letter, determining that the applicant entity is a nonprofit, state certificate of formation, a timeline, a project timeline. This program is being funded with federal monies, so the end date of a project must be 12/31/2026. So all applicants have to provide a project timeline that shows that the project can be completed by that date. A current New Jersey tax clearance certificate, a completed project source and use. The template is on the website. The project source and use has to show the A.R.T grant amount requested in the sources, and the sources must equal the uses for it to be a complete document and for the file to move on the scoring. The summary section must show all project uses are eligible, and so those are the major, as well as the uses on the source and use. Next slide, please. As we stated before, the minimum score to be moved on to scoring. The minimum score to be for board approval is 65 points. The highest possible score is 100 points. Proposals will be evaluated on 3 primary criteria. The ability of the organization to stimulate the local economy, the ability of the organization to contribute to the community post-COVID, and justification for the proposed use of funds with a reasonable budget to implement the proposed project. All declinations based on discretionary reasons will be brought to the board for approval. Non-discretionary reasons will not be brought to the board. So the scoring criteria, question 1, we're just going to break down the different criteria. The first criteria is to describe the project, including cost estimates. So finalized plans that are approved either by the nonprofits board, potentially go to a planning board, would get 8 points. Preliminary plans or drafts would get 3 points. If no documentation is submitted, it's 0 points. Next slide. The next scoring criteria is site use and access. So basically, the entity has to show that they have access to use either the public space, or they may have ownership of the land. Basically, that they have access to the location to complete the project. It's 7 points if they demonstrate adequate site use and access, 0 points otherwise. Next slide, please. This slide is to describe how this project will increase foot traffic in local communities. This ties back to that the community selected, the 31 municipalities, were all negatively affected by COVID-19. And part of these monies are to increase the foot traffic in these municipalities. So it's 5 points if the applicant can demonstrate a significant increase in foot traffic based on the project. 3 points if a partial increase can be seen in the submission, and 0 points if no increase. Next slide, please. So this scoring question number 4 is demonstrating the level of experience an applicant organization has with similar projects. Examples of past projects that involve art-based activity, similar to what's being proposed, will increase the score. 15 points for 2 projects completed that the applicant can list and describe that are similar to the project being proposed. 8 points for 1 project completed. 0 points if no relevant examples are provided in the application. Next slide, please. So here were the scoring criteria. Number 5A is to contribute to the resilience of the community post COVID and mitigate the COVID-19. So it's how the project basically addresses and impacts the community in the short term, increases local business, local employment, adds to the local arts and cultural production in the area. And 15 points for a response that demonstrates both a short and long-term impact, 0 points if a project fails to demonstrate that engagement. Next slide, please. Barb, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I addressed this a little bit before, and I just wanted to underscore this because I know in conversations with folks out in the sector that, you know, it's just a really important point to sort of make. The way the question reads is, describe how your project will activate vacant or underutilized space post-COVID. And if you look at the details here of how we've specified what those activities can be and how we are defining underutilized space, it can include, but is not limited to, facilities, classrooms, production areas, galleries, exhibition and performance spaces, public and private buildings or parts of buildings, public or private, empty vacant lots or parcels, streets, blocks, and/or neighborhoods, public spaces such as parks, playgrounds, or art installations that have been impacted by COVID. So what was important to us was to build into this what is really the kinds of spaces that are organic to what arts and culture nonprofits do. And as I said, we have incentivized in the scoring process, we have incentivized this application to be, we've incentivized it for arts and cultural organizations that do that work full time for the lead applicants. And you know, what I want to point out here is that you can build out the kind of programming that you do in-house. You don't need only to go and do something out in public. That as long as your space is open to the public, you can, for example, take those ceramic studios that you have that have been dark 4 nights a week because you don't have enough funding to run classes and workshops in them 7 nights a week. You can now build out that kind of programming as long or you can have more performances, or you can partner with an organization across town and create a performance festival and do more of what you already do, only bigger and more robustly, in order to cultivate, foot traffic and stimulate the local economy. But it's an important distinction between ART phase 1, if you are familiar with that, and what we have built into phase 2, is that underutilized spaces can be inside your centers, inside your galleries, inside your nonprofits. Okay, going back to you, Matt. Next slide, please, Jasmine.
So this is, thanks, Barb. So this is scoring criteria 5C. Basically, we're requesting, and the project will be scored on how the project contributes to the community's vision post-COVID. 10 points if it demonstrates that the project contributes to visions and neighborhood plans, redevelopment plans, and/or statements, and 0 points if the project fails to demonstrate engagement with the community and the community's vision. Next slide, please. So this scoring criteria 6 is requesting the applicant to describe how the primary focus of the applicant organization is centered around the arts. The narrative should not be more than 250 words. And just basically how that the organization is geared toward the arts, has art and cultural advocacy, and promotes the arts through its history. Next slide, please. So scoring criteria 7 is regarding partnering. So the applicant entity, the nonprofit applicant entity, can partner, and we encourage them to partner with nonprofits, municipal entities, community groups, or other private sector entities to enhance the ability to complete the project and to also promote partnership in the arts community. The point scale for this is 10 points, 10 points for a letter of a commitment displaying the partnership, 0 points if the commitment can't be displayed or there is no partner. Next slide, please. So just some notes on prevailing wage. Any prevailing wage will apply to some projects. A project that has any form of construction or labor contract, prevailing wage will apply. For other, potential projects, it shouldn't apply in the arts field if no construction is involved or no labor contracts. Please be aware, though, that for projects that have construction and labor contracts, that it does apply to this program. Next slide. And here's just also, if prevailing wage does apply, this is just more on the prevailing wage requirements. The contractor will have to be a public works registered contractor. The link is provided here for the list of the current list of public works contractors available. Next slide. This is just also more information regarding the public works contractor. And I'm going to hand it back off to Barb.
Thanks, Matt. So I want to underscore a few things here about prevailing wage, based on what I know about my near and dear arts and culture sector. Prevailing wage can be a heavy lift if it's not something that you're already familiar with. What we're encouraging you to do, and have given you a lot of information for in these last few slides, is learn about prevailing wage, understand what it means. It's more than just hiring a contractor. Let's say that you want to build a stage for your street festival that you're designing. If you're going to build a stage, you're going to need to hire a construction or carpentry crew that has been pre-designated and certified by the Department of Labor in the state of New Jersey. And then there's a lot of other, it's deep information, and I am not an expert. It's a heavy administrative lift. So besides paying that contractor a higher wage than you might pay your handyman that your theater typically uses to come in and build sets or build stages, you're going to need to hire this kind of contractor. You need to pay them the wage that is designated appropriate for your county for that kind of labor. And if you click on this, you don't have to do this, Jasmine, but in this slide, if you go to that list, you can look at what the wages come to and build that into your budget so that you build that into what your ask is to the EDA. But the other thing to understand is that if you get involved in prevailing wage and construction, there's a lot of other administrative pieces involved in terms of paperwork that the EDA needs and the Department of Labor needs and so on. And so if you're not prepared administratively to do that kind of heavy lift, what I would recommend is think about conceptualizing projects that don't come anywhere near construction. If they do, they will have to be reviewed internally at the EDA and from the labor folks, and and we'll have to sort that out as we go. If it feels like too much of a heavy lift, don't go near anything that smells like construction. That's the best advice we can give. And that includes temporary things like a temporary stage, as far as we understand it, for a festival, or a temporary wall and a gallery for a visual art show. One of the things that we're working on with the prevailing wage is building into the application a set of self-certification questions in terms of how it will apply and how it might not apply. And so that will hopefully help to ease the intensity of prevailing. Let's go to the next slide, please, Jasmine. And so this wraps up our presentation. For more information about the program, I'm guessing that you already have the link to the Art Phase 2 webpage. Keep coming back to that page over the next few months between now and mid-September. All of the basic information is there. As we are building out the application and other information, frequently asked questions, for example, we will continue to add the links to that page. So loads of information is there. This is the email for questions about A.R.T. Phase 2. What I want to say is that between now and when the application opens, we are able to answer all kinds of questions. Once the application opens, I think the only kinds of questions that the EDA in terms of equity and fairness is able to answer will be kind of procedural and technical about the application and the process itself. But if you have questions about content, ask them now between now and when the application opens. Stay tuned for upcoming info sessions. We will do one more info webinar sometime after Labor Day. And in that webinar, what we will do is go through the actual application pages so that you'll be able to have a preview of those. You'll look at those. We'll go through what each question is asking for, what each form is asking for, so that folks have more clarity. The other things we're working on, and these are not absolutely set in stone yet, but we will be doing an in-person session, we think, in Middlesex County. We're looking at July 23rd. Once it's absolutely firmed up, we will post it on our events page. That's July 23rd in the evening in Middlesex County, I think at Middlesex County Community College. July 30th in Camden, and one of the Rutgers spaces in Camden. If the contracts get all finalized, those will be posted, and I will send out a mailing to everybody on this list. I think it's time for the Q&A, unless you have anything to add, Matt?
No,
You
let's take some
okay.
questions.
Actually, I do. I have a couple things to add now that I'm looking at my notes. A couple things just to sort of answer these ahead of time. If you have if you decide on a project that has multiple sites, so let's say it's a performance festival that's happening in Asbury Park, and there are 3 different venues that are going to be part of this festival. Each of the venues needs to fall within the 1.5 mile parameter of the rail station. So if multiple sites all have to come within the bounds of the rail station. I think those are all of the details, and let's see what questions we have. Aubrey, is that you or is that Christina? Who's running the show?
That's me. I am moderating Q&A. So
Aubrey Flanagan, Senior Advisor to Community Development.
Reporting for duty. So we have a couple general buckets of themes for questions. I'm going to start with some eligibility of the applicant questions. The first one we have here, and whether Matt or Barb, whoever is better positioned to answer this, please organically answer. But may a national nonprofit registered in another state be lead sponsor a project in an NJ eligible area?
That's you, Matt.
So they're located outside of New Jersey, right?
That is the question, yes.
Yeah. There's no requirement for the nonprofit to be inside of New Jersey. So.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Can a nonprofit submit an application for multiple locations within the approved regions, or only one municipality per area?
Can a nonprofit, go ahead, say it again?
Can they submit an application for multiple locations within the approved regions?
They have to, they're limited to one application as the applicant, if
Right.
that's the question. So
One project per EIN, correct?
One project, yeah, per EIN, one application per EIN.
Awesome. The next question is, so do the artist partners need to be New Jersey based, or can they be from other areas?
There's no requirement regarding, the only requirement regarding location is the project itself. So
if you were funded through ART Phase 1, are you ineligible for Phase 2?
if you were awarded in ART Phase 1, you are not eligible for ART Phase 2.
The next questions are about eligible uses. We have a lot of questions about, is this element of my project an eligible use? So if someone had a specific question about that, how would they go about getting that answered before application launch?
An example of the eligible uses is listed in on the web page. It's also in the board memo. If they have very particular eligible uses they want to review for us to review, they can email the email listed right there, artphase2@njeda.gov. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. So for everyone who asked, can I use this money towards rentals? Can I use this money towards maintenance? Can I use this towards marketing? Our eligible uses and ineligible uses are listed on the website, but if, as Matt said, if you have a very particular issue, go ahead and send that in an email to our email inbox located in the chat. Okay. The next question is, Can local government entities be a partner for projects?
Yes. They
Right.
can
And
be.
if there are any more questions about partnerships, see the scoring criteria to see how scoring is related to partnering for this project. All right, it looks like we have some more questions that came in during Q&A. So let me go to the bottom and see if I missed any general themes. Okay, still some more eligible uses. If you have a very particular eligible use question, please go to our inbox. Oh, here's a good one. Is this a reimbursable grant or is funding provided in advance?
It's provided in advance.
All righty.
And it's full disbursement. One disbursement.
Yes, one disbursement.
On
in
end.
it.
Okay, I'm looking through our last bits of questions, and it looks like we covered all the general buckets about eligibility for applicants, partnerships and scoring, as well as eligible uses. Okay. We do have two more good questions, I find. Can this grant serve as the sole funding for the project?
Yes.
Right. And then we do have a pretty generic question. I don't know how much y'all want to get into the details of this, but what are the reporting requirements?
There's going to be, so we're dispersing upfront. There's going to be progress reports displaying that the money was appropriately spent. This is federal money. We're subject to federal audits, so we need to see that the project occurred, that the money was spent for the eligible uses. So there will be progress and quarterly reports throughout the grant agreement stage.
Thanks, Matt. Piggybacking off of the sole funding, can you get additional sponsors for the event and program or project that you are proposing?
You can. As a federal program, I just want to mention that there is a duplication of benefit test. So, which basically means that two funding sources can't fund the same eligible use. But you can do it as long as there's enough expenses for the sources. The sources have to equal the uses at the end of the project, basically.
Thank you, Matt. One more quick question, and I think this is a good one to answer. What is the deadline for completing the projects?
December 31st, 2026.
You say that a little louder, Barbara, so everybody
December
hears.
31st, 2026. It's in the slideshow as well. It's on the webpage.
But please don't wait till December 30th, 2026 to complete the project. We have to report on it much earlier than that. So.
Thank you both for answering the questions. Just some last final, where can you find the latest information on the program?
It's the slide that is up.
There you go.
For more information, please visit njeda.gov. That leads you right to the project page. Aubrey, I see a question from Vanessa Romalo. Hi, Vanessa. Did we get to that one? I don't think we got to that one yet. Letters of support. Should applying organizations plan to collect letters of support for each partner named in the application? I think the answer to that is yes. And in the scoring criteria, there are specific bullet points as to what we need to see in those letters of support or letters of intent.
Yeah.
We want to know, right, that the partners are in for the long haul, that they're in for the scope of work, the timeline, and so on. So what are they committing to, and what are they bringing? You know, what actual hands-on support do they bring to the project? You want to add
Exactly.
that?
It's part of the scoring criteria. So, I mean, you could say you have a partner, it's not part of the eligibility documentation. You'd move on the scoring, but without, you know, the documentation and contracts between the partner and the applicant, you wouldn't score well on that particular scoring criteria. So.
Awesome. We have a few more questions trickling in. When is the grant awarded?
We anticipate, we anticipate the application window in the fall, and we anticipate awards next winter. So it would go to the NJEDA board after scoring. So all awards.
Awesome. And can you re-grant any of your grant to partner organizations?
No, the applicant entity has to be the entity receiving the grant, if that's the question.
Awesome. All righty. We have one interesting question. I'll pose it to y'all to see if you want to answer it. This one's from Brishan Miller. Are we penalized for asking the maximum amount if we can justify expenses?
No, if the maximum amount is 500,000, and if you can justify the expenses and with supporting documentation and proposals, no, it doesn't negatively impact your application.
So I do have some individuals coming in late saying that they may have missed some things. Don't worry, this has been recorded. It will be available on our webpage, njeda.gov/artphase2. So if you have a question that wasn't answered, please do definitely go back and view the recording and get ready for additional info sessions.
I see somebody saying that they think the chat was disabled. Can we enable it? Caitlin, are you on that?
What I would say is make sure, I think we should close it out pretty soon. I think we've answered a ton of the questions. And we're going to forward the materials out as well. So I'm going to make sure that people have the opportunity to kind of reflect on everything that was done. I don't want to drag this on because it's been so exciting. We've gotten through a ton of questions already. And again, the FAQs, the PowerPoint will also be online in addition to more webinars and an in-person that'll be there. So this is not your last chance. We promise, this is not your last chance. We're going to make sure that there is a ton of time opportunity to answer and ask questions. In addition, if you couldn't get your question answered directly here, go to artphase2@njeda.gov. Make sure you send your questions there. That way we can give you lengthy responses to your individual questions as well. But I do want to be kind of cognizant of the time, the questions that were asked. I don't want to drag this on too much longer and be cognizant of everybody's time. So I think that's good. And if we're ready, I think we're going to close this one out. Barb, do you have any last words?
I think it's really exciting. What I encourage folks to do is to, look hard to your local communities, your local partners. The intention of this is to reinvigorate these municipalities and the arts and cultural community in this state. So that we're excited to. It's the first time out the door that the EDA has really focused this much money in this way on this sector. So we're excited to see what happens, and I really encourage people to, you know, put your strengths to the test here and put together really cool projects working with local folks and partners and so on. Really exciting. That's it. I'm good. Matt, you have anything?
All right, there you go. I'm
No,
gonna close out.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.